kept a Jew in his home, the whole family would be, if somebody squealed on them, the whole family would be taken out and shot. So it was very difficult for them, but at the same time, they became the beneficiary of the Jewish wealth. The houses, all the houses, the clothes, all these things the Jews left,
all the possessions,
wound up in the Poles' hands. So we cannot sit in judgment to say that they didn't do much to help the Jews, because the conditions were very severe. As a matter of fact, a question came up after the war. How would you feel, how would you behave if you would be in this situation? Would you risk your life to save someone? This was the lingering question.
And what was the answer to the question if you had been in the case of
If you don't mind laughing.
No, if you had been a Pole at the time and someone else a Jew, would you have tried to, would you have been any different, do you think?
It was an unexplainable situation. You can imagine Yad Vashem has honored the righteous Gentiles. There's 5,000 Poles who are honored for a population of 30 million.
Go ahead.
I don't have a question, so.
I have a question. Should I have a question? Do you have something?
No.
Okay, I'm going to ask the next question. When exactly were you taken from your home? How did that, can you describe a little bit how that happened and what that was like?
Seeing that the questions have quieted down, I will give them a rendition of the life that started when the Germans worked in.
What year are we talking about now?
Pardon?
What year?
1939. September 1st, 1939.
There you go. I know, I want them to know. September
Because
1st,
I think
1939.
it would give them an interesting insight, especially if I talk about my wife.
Exactly.
but you're not there yet.
The war breaks out. The Germans walked in, it didn't take more than 3-4 days. They walked in, and by coming into the city, our life has changed upside down. The reason I say upside down, because no one expected severe restrictions to be called upon you day in and day out. There were so many restrictions that in most cases you lost track even what you are supposed to do, what you are not supposed to do. When they marched into the city, they rounded up the elderly Jews who were running the Jewish affairs before the war, and they instilled in them, they empowered them that from here on, we are not going to deal with individual Jews. We're going to tell you what to do, and you're going to expedite the wishes on our behalf. So a police force was established, and the purpose of the police force was to be like a tool to expedite the orders that we get every day. So what took place was, right away, it didn't take much, maybe a week or two, and labor, free Jewish labor, was required by the Germans. So in order to get people to report to them to work, the police, who had a list of every household of how many able bodies there was, not girls, but men up to 45 years. Anything over 45 was useless. Kids, boys of 16, 15. So the police would come into to a house, and they knew there was two boys. They would leave the little notes. You have to report yourself to a area, an assembly area. They give you an address, and if you didn't come, they threatened you that an SS would come in and find out why you didn't come. So here life started, where 400 men, boys, were needed to clean the snow. Snowfalls in Poland were the same as here, but it wasn't such a thing as a rarity. This is the way it was. There was no heavy equipment to clean the snow. So you were given a shovel. You were told to go out with around 400 people in a certain spot where the highway was closed, and you were cleaning snow. Among other things was dredging rivers. There was a river, and they were interested to see that the river was clean because they were using barges. So they had to be dredged by hand. This lasted about a month or so, maybe less than a month. And then we found out the Germans had built up factories for the Poles before the war, which the factories never worked. They only started to work when the Germans marched into the city. By marching in and by seeing that the factories are working, they needed labor. So the cheapest labor was the Jews. So we started to be introduced into the factories to go. The compensation for working was pay. The pay was in lieu of a coupon that gave you some basic food. Potatoes, onions, bread. So if you worked, in my case, I was anxious to have the jobs because I was the bread provider for the family. I was 14 years old. My father couldn't go to work because he was too old. My mother, I had two sisters. In any case, this is how things were in 1940. 1941 turns around, and they established a ghetto. In most cities in Europe and in Poland are built with a square in the middle, houses around on the square, and this became the most convenient area to have the ghetto. So people who were living outside were chased into the ghetto area, and the situation became rather difficult, because if you had a house in the ghetto and you had 2 or 3 children, you were compelled to take in 2 or 3 more families into the same area. So you can imagine a house, a small house, had 12, 16 kids, grown-ups, all in a small area like this. So life became very unbearable. The crying from the kids for food, the complaints, the nerve-wracking situation. It was a very difficult time. This lasted till October 27, 1942, where prior to the date, we were listening to news from Jewish areas being liquidated all around us. And we found out that this city is